What's going on? Welcome to the episode. Today we are going to be chatting about the N1 Fitness fat loss philosophy. So basically exactly how I approach fat loss and lifestyle from a coaching perspective with my clients. And what originally sparked this was an interesting question that I received from someone the other day. And this individual said, I looked at the results that you get with your clients on social media and the transformations page of your website, and I can't figure it out. How do you do it? Do you have some special diet? Do you focus on exercise? Do you have your clients count macros? Like, what the heck are you doing with these folks? I've tried so many diets and I've never gotten results like that. What's the secret? So, in this episode, I am going to explain exactly how I do it from start to finish. Now, the name of my business gives a big hint as to how I approach getting fat loss results with my clientele, because in science, an N of 1 is a single subject clinical trial that considers one individual as the only person of observation in a study investigating the efficacy or the side effect profiles of different interventions. Now I'll explain that in English. An N of 1 is a study on a single individual. And when you work with me, that individual is you, hence N1 Fitness. Typically, scientific studies are done on a group of individuals, right? They take, say, 100 participants, they implement some sort of intervention. Let's say it's a specific diet. They pool all of the data together, and then they come up with an average result. But the reality is that individuals, by definition, are not averages, meaning just because some studies said that a specific dietary, exercise, or lifestyle approach worked for, say, 60 out of 100 people doesn't mean that you are in that 60, right? You may have been in the group of 40 that it didn't work for. And so that's why personalization and individualization is so important to me around yielding the best results for my clients. I do not work with averages. I work with unique individuals and I tailor my approach accordingly. It's the opposite of a cookie cutter diet and lifestyle. It's highly individualized because we are all different. Just because something worked for your neighbor or your cousin or your friend doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work for you. So that's the genesis of N1 Fitness. Now, let's get more specific here. What aspects are included in my individualization process? A ton of them, which we'll get into, but there are 4 key pillars, okay? And those 4 pillars are nutrition, movement, sleep, and stress management. Now, if you think about a 4-legged stool, these are the 4 legs. And if you cut off a leg, all of a sudden the stool becomes a whole lot less stable. And so I focus on all 4 in order to get the best results. Let's double click on nutrition. When it comes to fat loss, nutrition is without a doubt, no questions asked, the most important pillar. It's the foundational leg of the stool. I'm sure that you've heard sayings like abs are made in the kitchen and you can't out-exercise a poor diet. It's true. And this is why the nutrition piece is the linchpin in regards to fat loss. But the question becomes why? Why is it that nutrition is the most important factor? Why isn't it exercise, for example, which many people still believe it is? The reason is because when you boil it down to bare bones, you really only need one thing in order to lose fat. And that one thing is a calorie deficit, okay? And all that means is that you are using more energy than you are taking in. And it turns out that modifying your nutritional intake is the most effective way to create a calorie deficit. It sounds simple, right? And it truly is simple. However, simple is a very different thing than easy. This is why generic advice like just eat less and move more in and of itself is a terrible recommendation because sure, it's a simple concept that happens to be true, but implementing it in a practical and sustainable way is not easy because if it were, we'd all have six packs. So, this is where my individualization process really shines because what I do is I create a nutrition program and strategy that first and foremost creates a calorie deficit for my client so that we're losing fat, but it also makes that calorie deficit as easy to follow as possible given that unique individuals' food preferences, schedule, goals, priorities, time commitments, etc. I've worked with over 400, potentially approaching 500 folks at this point. I've got more than 10 years of experience in this coaching game, and no two client nutrition and lifestyle programs have ever looked exactly the same. Hence the N of 1. And this makes perfect sense, right? Let's use the most extreme example to illustrate this point. Identical twins. They are more similar than anyone can ever get to another individual, and still, they're quite different. Sure, they have a bunch of commonalities, but they are far from the same when you look at their personalities, their preferences, mental and emotional makeup, and the list goes on. The truth is, even though we call them identical twins, they actually don't even look identical if you're paying close enough attention. I went to school with two sets of identical twins, and the better that I got to know them, the more and more different I realized that they really were. It became easier and easier to tell them apart from the way that they looked, to the way that they dressed, to the way that they walked, their personalities, their strengths, their weaknesses, just their general vibe, and on and on and on. So, personalization is crucial because when it comes to diets that actually work for fat loss, as of today, there are 7.8 billion of them because there are 7.8 billion folks on the planet. Now, I want to give you a few specific examples of some of these differences, but first, what tends to be the same? With all of my clients, I favor single ingredient whole foods for fat loss for two primary reasons. The first one is that they are the healthiest, and the second one is that they are the most satiating. They fill you up. And because a calorie deficit is required for fat loss, favoring single ingredient whole foods makes following said deficit far easier. For example, what's going to fill you up more? 2,000 calories from foods like meat, fish, seafood, eggs, dairy, potatoes, rice, pasta, bread, avocados, nuts, seeds, whole fruit, etc. Or 2,000 calories from burgers, pizza, ice cream, donuts, pastries, and muffins. It is without a doubt the former. And that's not to say that my clients never eat processed foods. They absolutely can and do. However, we're sure to favor single ingredient whole foods because they make achieving and maintaining our fat loss goal far easier because hunger isn't sustainable. Okay, so now let's dig into a few examples of nutritional differences that I take into account from person to person. Calorie intake, protein intake, carb intake, fat intake, activity level, types of activity, number of meals per day, number of snacks per day, meal timing, specific food preferences, schedule, social tendencies, food access, food allergies, food intolerances and sensitivities, digestive differences, psychology, diet history, and the list goes on. Now that's just one pillar. It is the most important pillar for fat loss, but I'm sure that you're starting to see just how necessary personalization is because cookie cutter approaches simply will not work for you as an individual. If you want real world lasting results, you've got to tailor everything for you specifically and where you're at. Movement. What do I consider movement? I classify movement as step counts, first and foremost, followed by anything and everything else, which are things like gym workouts, yoga, exercise classes, Legree, etc. I recommend that all of my clients aim for 10,000 steps per day. And if they want to work out on top of that, that's awesome, but it's a bonus, not a requirement. For some reason, folks think that my clients are just absolutely busting their asses in the gym, and the truth is, the vast majority of them just aren't. For example, if you look at Allie's transformation on my website, she lost 17 pounds in 12 weeks, and she literally went to the gym once. She worked shift work, and so her schedule varied a lot. And because of that, we prioritized nutrition, step counts, and sleep. And her results are amazing. Again, personalization for the win. If I said, Allie, I know you're super tired, I know you just work back-to-back graveyard shifts, but you have to go to the gym. That doesn't take Allie as a unique individual into account. Also, folks just drastically overestimate the value of formal exercise when it comes to fat loss. If you compare an hour-long workout to an hour-long walk, the walk is going to burn more calories. I know that may sound loco, but it's just true. If you want to know how and why it's true, listen to episode 119 of the pod, and I explain it in detail. Also, it's worth mentioning that if a client of mine doesn't have time to even hit 10,000 steps per day, they can still get awesome fat loss results via nutrition. Is it ideal? No. But I shape and mold my approach to the individual and meet them where they're at. For example, a current client of mine is a mother of 2 young boys that also works, and she just cannot hit 10,000 steps per day purely due to time. Forget about workouts. And guess what? She's down 32 pounds in 14 weeks. She started at 169 and now she's in the 130s. She's averaged about 5,000 to 6,000 steps per day, but, and this is a big but, her nutrition is friggin' dialed. Point being, there are pie in the sky ideals and quote unquote optimal approaches, and then there's real life. So be sure that your coach meets you where you're at, or if you're coaching yourself, be realistic and practical about how you can best get the results that you're after given the reality of your life, because everyone can get results when they prioritize the right things. So the order of importance for me and my clients when it comes to movement specifically are step counts, first and foremost, followed by everything else. And no matter how busy you are, even if you don't have a single spare minute for movement, fortunately you can still lose fat because we can still modify your nutrition accordingly, which is great news. On to sleep. Generally speaking, 99% of folks are going to need somewhere between 7 and 9 hours of sleep per night. However, tons of factors impact how many hours you as an individual are going to need. For example, if your sleep quality sucks and you're waking up a bunch throughout the night because, say, your blood sugar levels are all over the place via poor diet, you're going to need more time in bed. If you decide to start training for a marathon and your activity levels increase a bunch, you're going to need more sleep in order to recover fully. If you're eating foods that you're sensitive to or intolerant to on a regular basis, you're going to need more sleep because eating foods that you don't tolerate causes inflammation and damage, and that damage needs to be repaired, and it happens while we sleep. If you have an especially cognitively demanding time of year at work, you're going to need more sleep during this time. The more alcohol that you drink, the more sleep that you're going to need for 2 reasons. One is that alcohol impairs sleep quality, and therefore you need more hours to get the same amount of restoration. And 2, alcohol is incredibly inflammatory, and similarly to eating funky foods that you don't digest well, it creates damage that needs to be repaired. That repair happens while we're sleeping. These are just a few quick examples of how sleep needs vary based on an individual's habits. And this isn't even mentioning the psychological component to sleep. And when a client of mine is having trouble sleeping, we're sure to tick all of the nutrition and movement boxes, along with being sure that they're getting adequate daylight exposure during the day, minimizing bright light at night, configuring their room so it's dark and cool, and then we may need to implement some other modalities in order to calm them down and shut their brain off, like journaling potentially, or staying on top of their to-do list, possibly mixing in a to-worry list, which I'm not going to get into right now, but I've had a lot of success via to-worry lists around sleep with my clients. Also, we're going to need to manage sleep differently, whether we're talking about a breastfeeding mother versus a 28-year-old single individual that lives alone, or if a client works shift work. That changes things. If they're on a week-on, week-off schedule, we navigate that. If they work in film and TV with varied call times, all of this stuff factors into the personalization process and even how we manage nutrition, movement, and stress management in and around it. So sleep needs vary between individuals, and sleep needs vary for you as an individual based on what's going on in your life at that specific time. The same concept applies to nutrition and movement as well, and all three of them intersect with our next pillar, stress management. Fortunately, when my clients and I button up the nutrition, movement, and sleep pillars, the need for specific stress management strategies declines like crazy because it is amazing how much more resilient to stress my clients are after having worked with me for a while. Also, poor nutrition is a massive stressor in and of itself. And so when we dial it in, it not only reduces stress inputs, it also makes us more resilient to external stressors. The same goes for movement. Not moving enough, a sedentary lifestyle, is a stressor. And so when we increase our movement to adequate amounts, that stressor that is a sedentary lifestyle is no longer there. Also, it's worth mentioning that moving too much is also a stressor, i.e., over-exercising isn't where we want to be either. Running 50 marathons a year or working out 14 times per week is massively stressful. So when it comes to movement, you can underdo it and you can also overdo it. Both are stressors. Getting inadequate sleep is a huge stress. And so when we square away our sleep, we reduce our stress levels drastically and make ourselves far more resilient to whatever life throws at us. Now, once our nutrition, movement, and sleep is on point, there are absolutely additional life stressors that pop up that impact us. Maybe a friend or family member falls ill. Maybe your kid is getting bullied at school. Maybe you're not liking your job all that much. Maybe you and your partner are going through a rough patch. Life happens. And in scenarios like this, I'm just here for my clients. And I'd love to provide examples, however, they are so individually specific because I'm essentially taking every single interaction that I've ever had with my client into account when offering advice. And this is where the art of coaching truly comes in, because if this whole personalization concept wasn't nuanced enough in terms of nutrition, movement, sleep, and stress management, now consider that these are not separate and siloed areas of life, right? They are always feeding off and interacting with one another because your nutrition impacts your movement, sleep, and stress management. Your movement impacts your nutrition, sleep, and stress management. Your sleep impacts your nutrition, movement, and stress management. Your stress management impacts your nutrition, movement, and sleep. So it's not 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 = 4. It's more like 4 × 4 = 16, because these 4 pillars are always impacting and influencing one another at every single moment of your life. For example, A single food, movement, sleep, or stress management decision can create a snowball effect for the better or for the worse. So let's say that yesterday you were contemplating making breakfast at home or grabbing it on the run. And you decided to grab it on the run, and it was an option that didn't make you feel all that great. You now go to work, you're not feeling so hot, and you were planning on ordering healthfully at your client lunch meeting, but you then decide to just grab the burger and fries because you're low energy. You then feel even worse, and you had a workout schedule before dinner that you just decide to skip. You get home after work, and normally you make your dinner, but you're just not feeling it, and so you order in. The meal that you order doesn't sit all that well in your stomach, and it ends up disrupting your sleep that night. You wake up tired the next day, and so you have an extra afternoon coffee. That extra coffee then impairs your sleep that night. You now have 2 shitty sleeps back to back, and on and on and on. A single decision can ripple into a bunch of decisions and potentially a bunch of days or weeks or even years. And so these are the cycles that I help my clients break so that we can get the ball rolling in a more healthful direction and build momentum so that the snowball effect is working in our favor versus against us. So circling back around to a cookie cutter approach, it just doesn't make any sense, does it? It's like forcing a square peg into a round hole. So hopefully it's clear now that nutrition and lifestyle integration is something that needs to be personalized if you're keen on getting both great results and sustainable results. And now, I'm going to share with you how my intake process works, as well as weekly check-ins, how I set up my clients for long-term success, etc. First off, most of my potential clients apply for coaching with me through my website via a short contact form with their name, email, location, what they're looking to get out of coaching, how they heard about me to begin with, and why they are choosing N1 specifically. When I receive their application, I look it over and make sure that we're the right fit for one another. And if so, I send them an email outlining how the whole process works. A comprehensive questionnaire, instructions, and examples on exactly how to take their progress photos, as well as the investment details. My entry-level program is 12 weeks. There is also a 20-week option, a 30-week option, and a year-long program. Some folks work with me for 12 weeks, and others work with me for years if they want to keep the accountability in place. However, I'd say on average, folks are typically with me for about 20 weeks. But for some folks, it truly does all just click after a 12-week program, and they ride off into the sunset with a bang and bod. Also, I'll be honest, plenty of my clients have worked with me more than once, and that is totally normal. I've had folks email me with their tail between their legs a year or two after a 12 or 20-week program because they've regressed. And there's absolutely no reason to feel guilt or shame or anything of the sort in a situation like this. Because for a lot of people, massive lifestyle shifts like this don't always stick in every way, shape, or form after only, say, 3 months. If you've been alive for 30, 40, 50 plus years, well, you've got 30, 40, or 50 plus years of habits in place. And to always expect every single one of them to shift in a 12-week time period isn't always realistic. For some folks it does, but for some folks it doesn't, and that's okay. It definitely took me more than 12 weeks to get where I am. However, it's worth mentioning that I've never had a nutrition coach, and now looking back, it would have saved me so much time and effort. But my situation is a lot different to yours, being that this is what I do for a living. And going through all of that trial and error has without a doubt made me a far better coach because I truly get it. I've been 65 pounds overweight. I've done just about every diet under the sun. I've taken all the over-the-counter supplements that don't work. I've essentially made all of the mistakes. and I wouldn't change a thing about my journey. For you though, getting a good coach will without a doubt expedite your process by like 1,000-fold. So after I send my potential client an email with all of the coaching details, they fill out our questionnaire, they snap their pics, and they sign the N1 agreement form. I then look over their questionnaire in detail and double check to make sure that we're still the right fit for one another coaching wise, and at this point, about 99% of people are. Then I put their personalized nutrition and lifestyle program together and I send it over to them in an email that outlines all of the ins and outs. At this point, they may have some questions, but oftentimes they don't, just because I've refined my process a lot over the past decade, so much so that they're most often like, this is all super straightforward, I'm excited. Now, my clients check in with me every single week. So each one of my clients has a designated check-in day where they send in their photos and they fill out questions that I send them the day before. So let's say that Barbara's check-in day is on Wednesday, okay? I send Barb an email on Tuesday, the day before her check-in. She then fills out those questions and snaps updated progress photos. She then sends me those questions and photos on Wednesday morning. I go through said questions in detail, assess her photos, and then make any of the necessary adjustments that we need to make in order to continue to progress towards her goals. Those weekly questions outline how her nutrition went for the week, step counts, digestion, libido, energy levels, what she's found easy, what she may have found difficult, booze intake, stress, sleep, hydration, how she felt about her week, where she's at in her menstrual cycle. Obviously, this one is only for women, how we're going to plan for the upcoming week, etc. Barb then implements and follows our nutrition and lifestyle program for another 7 days, and then we check in again a week later. We see how we're progressing via the questions and photos and make the necessary adjustments again. Those adjustments could be specifically nutrition related via modifying portions, food options, her nutrition structure, so maybe she wants to add a snack or something, and or we could be looking at movement and how we can improve that, or sleep, or managing stressors given how her circumstances may have shifted. It's truly an interactive team effort between my client and I, and one thing that I don't do is simply tell folks what to do. I am not a drill sergeant, and so if you want that, I'm not your guy. Now don't get me wrong, everything is incredibly specific as far as food options, portions, meals, snacks, etc. And there is no guesswork involved for my client. They know exactly what to do in order to reach their goals, but it's a team effort to get where we want to go. Not I'm the sergeant and you're the soldier sort of dealio. That setup isn't sustainable in my eyes, nor is it creating nutrition and lifestyle independence. My clients can also email me 24/7 throughout their program, and we often talk throughout the week based on what's going on at that given time. Personally, I like to check in on my clients at least one other time aside from our formal check-in, because support is a super important aspect to this process, and I like to maintain consistent communication. Some additional side benefits that a lot of my clients notice outside of fat loss, increased confidence, sense of well-being, etc. are the elimination of bloating and digestion issues. This is a biggie and honestly increases quality of life so much. And I'm speaking from personal experience as someone who suffered from a ton of digestion troubles when I was younger. A healthier relationship with food is another benefit. And the way that I like to explain this is that a shift happens where my clients don't work their day around food, but they work their food around their day. It's essentially food freedom, and it's really powerful. Another thing that I've experienced personally, because I used to obsess about food, whether I was eating healthfully or unhealthfully, to be honest, because I was always just sort of panicked about when and what my next meal was going to be, or worried about being without food, or whether what I was eating was getting me closer or further away from my goals. It just wasn't fun. Increased energy and libido, which totally makes sense because evolution rewards healthy people with the energy to do fun things and have sex, because evolution wants to progress. And progression is based on passing along healthy genes, not unhealthy ones. Better sleep and improved skin. The skin one is big, and the most common thing that I hear my clients say around their skin is that folks tell them all the time that they're glowing and that they just look healthy. Fortunately, no matter what is going on with your skin, it's fixable. From acne to pimples to breakouts to rosacea, eczema, psoriasis, you name it. Spoiler alert, digestion is the key and what I focus on with my clients that want to improve their skin specifically. A lot of my clients experience reduced inflammation and joint pain improvements, which also ties in heavily with digestive quality. We also identify food intolerances, sensitivities, and allergies. Hint, hint, testing is often a waste of time and money. I go about this in another way, which I have covered in some detail on the pod. Blood sugar regulation and mood stability. This is a big one because a lot of my clients come to me with frequent bouts of feeling hangry and moody if they don't have snacks on hand 24/7, for example. That stuff completely resolves itself when your nutrition and lifestyle are dialed in. I've seen it too many times to count, and it's funny because I often have my clients mention that their partners tell them that they're just more grounded, emotionally balanced, and mood stable. It's super cool. Improve PMS symptoms. This is something that I see super consistently in my female clients, and sometimes so much so that they even forget that their cycle is coming up until, boom, it's there. And they're like, holy shit, I had no cravings, no headaches, no digestion troubles or bloating, no breakouts, no cramps. All of this stuff is 100% avoidable. And no, you don't need to take the pill in order to improve your symptoms. Fortunately, we can do so via nutrition and lifestyle change. Branching off the cycle is perimenopausal, menopausal, and postmenopausal symptoms. And again, this transition can be so wildly smooth that it can often make folks angry because they're told over and over what a quote-unquote normal experience of this process is. This transition should not reduce the quality of your life in any way, shape, or form. And I fully realize that you may not believe me because of how you've been conditioned to believe what is in fact normal, but common is not necessarily normal. Normal is normal. A few common questions that tend to pop up. Can I eat more than just salads? Absolutely. I take an inclusive food approach versus an exclusive one. Can I eat carbs like pasta, rice, bread, and potatoes? Every day. Do I have to give up my favorite foods? No. I include a weekly treat meal for all of my clients who want it. Am I always going to feel hungry? This is a common one. And negative. You do not feel hungry on properly structured fat loss programs. It's quite the opposite, actually. You're going to feel nourished and satisfied. Can I eat out? Of course. I do encourage my clients to cook most of their meals. However, I'm all about sustainability, and eating out is a super fun and enjoyable part of life. I also guide my clients through how and what to order if they're keen on staying on point for specific meals out, for example. Can I drink alcohol? Yes. The quote-unquote sweet spot for my clients that get the best results typically falls in the 2 to 4 drinks per week range. However, a lot of my clients choose to drink more than that and they still achieve great results. Plenty of whom are on my transformations page, actually. Do I need to exercise like crazy? Kind of already covered this one, and no, you don't. My clients are free to go to the gym if they want to. However, like I mentioned, you can absolutely achieve incredible results without formal workouts. I do offer personalized workout programming as well for my clients who are interested in taking the guesswork out of their exercise sessions and want a specific program to follow so that they don't have to wonder or think about whether what they're doing workout wise is moving them in the right direction. Will I need to take a whole bunch of supplements? No. Supplements are not necessary for fat loss results. And the truth is, there are no over-the-counter supplements that exist that actually result in any fat loss progress that you'd even notice. Is coffee allowed? I'm always stunned by this question. Of course, that would be some sort of sick joke if it wasn't. I love my coffee. So, this is how I get my clients results via highly personalized nutrition and lifestyle coaching. And once our 12, 20 or more week program wraps up, they've achieved great results, they feel better than they ever thought that they could, and they basically crush life in a whole new way. I also provide what I like to call a post-program blueprint, which is a super simple step-by-step formula that outlines exactly how to maintain results over the long term. Now, like I mentioned before, sometimes life happens and folks fall off track with the blueprint, but for my clients that follow it, 100% of them maintain their progress. No ifs, ands, or buts. So, this is super powerful stuff. And it's just so cool to watch because yes, my clients are transforming physically, but they're also transforming mentally and emotionally because physical transformation is also a reflection of the mental and emotional growth that's taking place. This stuff is quite literally life-changing. It changed my life, and tons of my clients have shared with me that it's changed their lives as well. So let's say that for whatever reason, you don't want to work with a coach. You could even mimic this formula and take yourself through the transformation process. It's almost certainly going to take you a lot longer and require more of you from a time standpoint due to the fact that you might not know exactly what you're doing. But if you want it bad enough, you will get there. I figured it out for myself because plain and simple, quitting before I reached my goal just was not an option that I considered. The obvious advantage that I had is that this nutrition and lifestyle stuff is my passion. I'm obsessed with it, and I'd be doing it in some way, shape, or form, even if it wasn't my career. And so if you're not doing research on this stuff in your spare time, and you're not thinking about making it a career, you'll almost certainly be happy that you got a coach because it's like plumbing or electrical. If you're not passionate about learning the ins and outs around plumbing or wiring up your own home, invest in someone that knows how to do it because it'll save you so much time and so much effort. Personally, I outsource those things because I'd rather invest time in my passion and secure the financial stability that way in order to pay to get someone else to do the plumbing and electrical. Simply because I don't want to invest the time that it would take in order to learn how to do it myself. I'd rather invest that time in what I love. Having said that, like I mentioned before, you can figure this stuff out on your own. You don't have to have a coach. There is tons of free information online. Shit, there are literally hundreds of hours of this podcast to listen to that will absolutely help you on your health and fat loss journey. If you're interested in applying for one-on-one nutritional coaching and or workout design with me, you can click the link in the description below or head on over to n1fitness.com/coaching. On Instagram, I'm at n1fitness, TikTok at the n1fitness, YouTube at Marcus Sadu. Feel free to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform if you'd like to, of course, and be sure to hit that subscribe button. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope that you found this episode useful, and I will catch you on the next one. See ya.